Hello beautiful people and welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences from people all over the world. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. At a speed of 65 miles per hour, a Chevrolet Caprice Classic from 1974 collided with the back of my Toyota pickup as I was driving it. Due to the collision, my seat had become unfastened, and I found myself unable to move in it. My head had been pounded around, and I had multiple head injuries as a consequence of being flung around when the truck was being folded up akin to an accordion. My head had been battered around, and I had numerous head injuries. I never fully regained consciousness at the scene of the accident since it felt more like a dream to me than anything else did at the time. After some time had passed, and I thought back on the event itself, I could see how everything fit together. On the other hand, when it did take place, I was hit with a wave of complete calm and a sense of being detached from my body. I was at what I can only describe as a junction for want of a better phrase. I was not in the shape of a person. I was a source of pure energy, and I found myself pulled to a massive light that was both white and golden, and which appeared to engulf the entire universe. When I was at this intersection, I got a sketching feeling that may be described as follows: picture breaking an egg on your ceiling and seeing a very fine line of egg white that runs all the way from your ceiling to your floor. That's how it felt to me. The other location was the ceiling, and my body was the floor of that place. Both were linked to me in some way. When I touched the spot where I had seen the other world, it started drawing me towards it, and as it did so, it felt to me like I was having an encounter with an electrical gadget called a eye of the storm. When you contact the glass on this gadget, the static electricity is pulled to your fingertips since it is generated by the device's static electric field. The same thing happened to me when I was touched by the strands of electricity. I had the sudden impression that I knew everything and had experienced the entirety of existence. There is no heaven or hell, but the purity of the cosmos as a whole. The Christian philosophy and all other religions teach that heaven exists, but other religions also teach that hell exists. The energy there was not simply human in nature. All of the life here on earth, both from the past and the present, was also there. This clarified to me the notions of human reproduction as well as the sensations that some people experience when they think of reincarnation. This seemed to be the most fundamental aspect of all life, including that of humans, animals, and even plants. I also had the impression that I was free of all discomfort. When the paramedics used the defibrillators on me, I sensed the first shock as being relatively light, but the last one, the one that returned me to full muddled awareness, was incredibly painful. As the paramedics began to apply the defibrillator to my heart, and this is completely supposition, the link between the other place and the world began to break down, and I was dragged back to my own body. At first, I was upset, but then I started to see the rationale behind my return. It was just not the right moment for me. I was no longer afraid of dying since I had already experienced its aftereffects, but after a while it dawned on me that because I had already solved the secret of death, I should now focus on solving the mystery of life. I always felt that this was because my brain was not able to handle everything that I had experienced, but I did remember the fundamentals of what I had been through. As I was drawn back to my body, I started to forget everything that I had experienced, but I did remember the basics of what I had been through. I had the impression that there had been a sharing of comprehensions that I will never forget, and what I believe in at this point is truth in its most unadulterated and fundamentally uncomplicated form. Death is only a transition into an other realm of existence. The real wonder is life itself. There was simply a peace that I now possessed that allowed me to see the universe and all of the life in it as a delight. It wasn't a psychic or religious occurrence, it was just a quiet. According to a professor with whom I am currently collaborating on a contract project, he feels that I have made contact with the center of creation. Perhaps he is correct, but for the time being, I have the impression that my life has given me new and expanded perspectives, which enable me to view life as a gift and a blessing. After I was discharged from the hospital some time later, a priest from the Catholic Church got in touch with me. I demanded an account of what I had been through, and when I gave it to him, it was not what he expected me to give him. When he realized this, he became angry, and he cautioned me not to tell other people about what had occurred to me because it contradicted his understanding of who God was. I am aware that there is a spirit, but it is neither male nor female, it simply is, and that is the essence of how straightforward everything is. He told me that I had just experienced loose electrical energy scurrying through my brain, and that I would be saved if I prayed to God and requested Him to enter my life and show me His genuine purpose. He also claimed that I would be saved if I asked Him to reveal me His true purpose. I informed him that I believed his religion was spreading a deception to the general population and that what I had experienced was the truth about life and how it got started. I went on to say that his religion was the one that had led me astray. Now we go on to the next NDE narrative. Throughout the course of my life, I have experienced a number of experiences in which I was outside of my body. Every single one of them is truly one of a kind. When I was 9 years old, I was in the hospital for surgery, and that is when I distinctly recall having my first one. I have a strong suspicion that one of them was a brush with death. The out-of-body experience that I would want to talk about with you today took place around 4 months after my son lost his battle with brain cancer and went away. When he was diagnosed, he was 19 years old, and he only survived for another 15 months until he passed away. My son was the most beautiful human being I have ever known, and his sickness, operations, treatment, and passing have all left me feeling shaken to my very core. He had been such a blessing to me from the very beginning, and I adore him with a depth of love that I simply cannot put into words. The level of loss and sorrow that I was experiencing at the time of my out-of-body experience made me question whether or not I would be able to carry on with the rest of my life. The occurrence of the OBE took place in the early hours of the morning. Even though I was feeling peaceful, I didn't get out of bed. My husband had to report to work extremely early in the morning, therefore he had to leave the house really early. My best guess is that it was between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning. I was overcome with the same sensations that I get just before I have an out-of-body experience. A rushing sound can be heard, and it seems as though my own being is moving about beneath the surface of my skin. I was suddenly transported to a breathtaking location after being out of my body for what seemed like an eternity. I was just abruptly present at this location without any awareness of any trip that preceded my arrival. My surrounds are very lush, green, and groomed. It appears as though a gardener has taken great care to make this location lovely, but this beauty does not come in the form of neatly arranged flower beds. The foliage on some of the trees were a dark burgundy color, and the trees themselves were enormous and lush with many different shades of green. There was a driveway that was paved in brick and had a little incline. At this time, I did not observe any buildings or other structures nearby. 3 masculine figures could be seen standing on the brick driveway at the top of the incline. I had no trouble recognizing that the person in the center was my son David. He looked up, and the next thing he knew, I was in his arms. He had picked me up, and he was twirling me around while saying, "I love you, I love you, I love you." He looked up, and the next thing he knew, I was in his arms. The words are lovely, but it was clear that they were more than words, or perhaps they were not even words at all. I was able to sense his message throughout my entire body, and in response, I was sending him numerous "I love yous." It was the deepest, most profound love I've ever experienced, and it was all I needed. I am unaware of the identities of the other young men. They seemed to disappear out of view, leaving David and I alone in the room. I am aware that we engaged in conversation of some kind and that he introduced me to other people, but I do not recall any of the specifics of that interaction at this time. I am aware of the fact that, due to an unforeseen circumstance, I was unable to carry that information back with me. I was startled to find that I had returned to the confines of my body. This event helped me develop the resilience that I so desperately required at that time. I was successful in proceeding forward. 2 or 3 months later, I had another out-of-body experience that took place in the early morning hours while I was awake and conscious. This time, it occurred while I was outside of my body. Once more, I was taken directly to a location in an instant. The initial encounter with David was nothing like this scene at all, which couldn't be more different. It was arid and dry, with sagebrush-like growth dominating the landscape. There was a skinny body of water that was quite close to the base of a modest hill. I live in an area that is surrounded by large mountains, but I've traveled to other places where the landforms that I would describe as hills are referred to as mountains. These were arid hills with a rolling topography. On the highest point of one of the hills, there was a sizable gathering of young people. I was on the opposite bank of the water from the hill where they were standing. In front of me was a structure that appeared to be made of cement, and behind me was some kind of railing and paving that appeared to be made of cement. I had no doubt in my mind that my son was on the opposite bank of this body of water. There was not a single person there who was significantly older or younger than David. They were competing against one another in a tournament-style game by teaming up and working together to try to push their opponent off the platform and into the water below without using their arms. As soon as I began searching the group for David, he appeared out of nowhere and stood right next to me. At this point, David was taken aback by the fact that I was present, and I believe we thought about, the reasons for this. I believe he was content with the knowledge that I simply needed to see him or be reassured that he was okay. I was just keenly aware of the absence of my son. David brought me to the structure that had an atmosphere similar to that of a classroom. I was able to participate in the lecture as well as sit in on the class, and I got to meet all of the lovely young people who were there. I have no recollection of what was explained or discussed, but I have the impression that I am familiar with it on a more fundamental level. These two out-of-body experiences helped me to be able to carry on with my own life despite the challenges I faced after them. Extreme sadness and loss have been a part of my life for quite some time, but being able to see my son again and knowing that he is doing wonderfully well and is no longer in any pain has helped me move on with my own life. Although I have had many other out-of-body experiences before and after the two that I had with David, I have to say that these two were the most incredible ones I have ever had.